Yes, so there are quite a few sort of intersections um, in my lived experience that have informed how my life has been. Mostly full of richness. I'd like to add, despite also challenges and trials and tribulations. For example, my sexual and gender identity are quite a lot to do with me being in London, because London was a place where I, I found others who also had some of these intersections, and others in the general population perhaps who met them with less hostility at times, at least, and some people at least, even some of the decades ago that I arrived. Where I came from, that wasn't quite the case, and I felt very much uh, an odd one out. And I'm also neurodiverse, so there is something of spectrumy, Aspergery qualities in my makeup, and that also has meant that I've often felt a bit of someone with quite maybe difference that I couldn't quite understand even myself until I kind of have studied these things in my own experience and in the world. And I think obviously coming from those positions of those intersections of sexuality, gender identity, my gender identity as well is one where I've never felt um, that I am of the gender, biological gender that I was born. So even at the age of 3 or 4, I already always felt that neutrality. So I feel that I am a gender. So, for example, in all my years of growing up and being in this world, I have never, for example, I never did read one single women's or teenage or girls magazines or anything of that kind. I was never drawn to that, nor did I want to transition from one gender binary to another. So there is that, again, a spectrum of human lived experience where not everyone actually experiences their identity, their way of being in the world, or their internal landscape as a binary. And I know that lots of people who do quite comfortably sit in binary still actually share with me and share in the world about the fact that how people are sometimes feeling some pressure to conform to how you should be in a binary also sits not very well with lots of people. So obviously there's that general issue there of expectations that often a burden at both ends of those binaries for people. But then there might be also something that's really strongly felt internal sense from very young age as well, where people realize their identity is somewhat different. So that's some of my lived experience, and obviously I at times have not been met with the same respect by whether it's family or society or context where I work or live or even friendships. Not quite met with the same recognition, and sometimes it's not very much. Also, there can be oftentimes not meant hostility or microaggressions, and so I do recognize that. But there's that sense where people somehow fear the otherness, and therefore they don't talk about lots of things, or they don't ask about your life, or they don't relate to you like they might to another. So there's sort of subtle forms of ways in which people can feel othered because others can't relate. And I kind of, in all those respects, would really like to see people bring their brave hearts to the quest of learning and reevaluating how they see difference in all the aspects of intersectionality, and kind of willingness to learn and willingness to open up and willingness to reevaluate, and therefore then perhaps be in the world in different ways in relation to difference. And and I think because of that sense from an incredibly young age, I then have also myself often been engaged in supporting people with other differences, because yeah, there's that famous saying that I can't quite remember, but it's like first they came for this group of people and I didn't speak out, and then they came for this and I didn't speak out, and then they came for this and I didn't speak out, and then when they came for me, there was no one left and to speak out for anyone. And you know, and just the richness of humanness, you know, is what sort of, you know, brings a song to my heart. And I love to celebrate the richness of intersectional differences and our richness of humanness. And that's sort of maybe just me in terms of, that's kind of something of me that I've just shared there. I haven't scripted this at all, and I told Teresa and Andrew I will not, because this feels like it just needs to be shared in a way that feels natural. And if it feels like I've shared only certain fractions and you're interested in any other aspects, or feel like I've left gaps, to ask. But in terms of how it's then informed my life and my working life, it always has. For example, I used to play tennis for Finland. Came through park courts, not some fancy private clubs, because they didn't exist in my hometown. And but I was very single-minded as a spectrumy person as well. Whenever I decide I'm going to learn something, I tend to learn it very well. And I therefore got to represent the junior and the senior team. And that meant that when I arrived in the UK, and instead of just cleaning or babysitting or whatever, which were some of the things I first did, even though I had been to uni already in Finland, but I decided to go back to tennis because, one, it's been something that's been part of my life pretty much all my life, but and sports in general. But also, I immediately could walk into places where I would get paid, at the time, to me, handsome money, because of my level of playing experience.